Welcome to the New Thought Ministry of Prayer.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the Science of Mind Saturday Conversations. Learn more about the Science of Mind philosophy, faith, and way of life. Join our team of experts for a weekly deep dive discussion. Come study the science of mind, chapter by chapter, and resources from the Science of Mind archives. Plan to join us every Saturday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, only on the New Thought Media Network.
Good morning, everybody. Mark Gilbert here. Glad to be back with you again. We have another interesting Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series for you. And it's going to be based on something different than the Science of Mind textbook. Those of you who follow the Saturday morning program probably know that we start at the beginning in January and go through the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes' great volume from 1938. And we do it chapter by chapter. And then sometime around in this time in the summer, we have conclude that and we flip over and start looking at other resources in Science of Mind, other resources of Ernest Holmes. And that is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be delving into another book, a book called Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, and looking at one of his talks from that particular book. And we're going to be getting into it. But I just want to mention to everybody who's joining us this morning that first off, welcome to the Saturday morning Science of Mind Conversation series. And that if you are watching live, I would invite you to share your name and location in the comment field, plus ask questions and leave comments. And as the banner says, I'll try to get to them. Topic today is going to be Discovering God. It's a discussion of a 1954 lecture by Ernest Holmes, contained in the book Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. And I've got some slides prepared here just so you can see what we're talking about. But here's the book itself, if you haven't ever gotten a copy of it. It's one that we compiled through the archives and published about 3 years ago. And it contains all of the known writings and classes and talks that he did at the Asilomar conferences in the 1950s. Ernest Holmes and his organization actually held summer conferences for people starting in the first one was actually in 1953 at another location in the Sierra Nevada mountains. But in 1954, they started going to Asilomar and continued for many, many years, even after Holmes' passing. But Holmes attended Asilomar and talked there from 1954 through 1959. And the book that we're going to be referencing today is one chapter of the book, and it's from his lecture in 1954. And it's kind of interesting in and of itself that the 1954 lecture is one that was the only one in the book from that year. It was one called Discovering God. We don't have anything from 55. We were not able to locate that, although we found the program and know the names of the talks he did and so forth. But they're not in the book. But from 1956, 57, 58, and 59, we have fairly complete transcripts of Holmes' talks at Asilomar, and they're all contained in the book, along with a lot of pictures and of the time period, Holmes at Asilomar himself visiting with people, walking around the grounds. And it's a fascinating book. And, I'm probably saying that because I was centrally involved in compiling it. But one of the things that I found after I compiled the book is I was sharing it with some of my friends who are not involved in Science of Mind. And they said, "Oh, you compiled a book." And so they went off and bought the book and they started reading it and they started going, "Well, I don't understand a word of what he's talking about." And so what we're going to be doing is going through the first lecture in the book, the first talk that he gave in the book from 1954. And I'm going to be giving some thoughts and my thoughts on what he's talking about in that particular thing. I actually, shortly after the book was published, and I had friends who were buying the book and saying, "I don't understand it." I loved your intro, which had history, but when I got into Holmes talks, I couldn't understand what he was talking about. And what I alerted them to is that this book was, and Holmes at Asilomar, he was going deeper. He was going much more deeper into the metaphysics of science of mind, and that's really what this book is. It's a deep dive into deeper concepts. The more outward, exoteric kind of presentations he would do in his radio shows, TV shows, his magazine articles, his Sunday talks he gave at the Beverly Theater in Los Angeles. But whenever he wanted to go deeper, he had some classes that he would teach during the week for people who really wanted to go deeper in the philosophy. And his summer conferences were people who were very steeped in the philosophy, and they would come to it. So the book is not the best intro. You can get something if you're new to the philosophy, but what I often tell people, there's other books and like this thing called You, this thing called Life, books like those, which are better intros into the philosophy than Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, which is a much deeper book. However, what we're going to do today is demystify one of the first lectures in the book, and I'm going to give you some quotes from the book, and I'm going to give you my takes on them. Excuse me. And have a little drink of water here. If you're interested in getting a copy of the book, it is available. You can go to CSL's website on their shop website and order it there. You can also go to Amazon. Most major books carriers carry it. You might have to order it. Most folks buy it through Amazon. I would encourage you to look at the Amazon page for this book. You can buy it in both a Kindle version and a paperback version. I would invite you to get the paperback version because that gets the layout much better of the pictures. And there's like about a 20, it says 18 archival photos listed there. It's about a 20-page section in the middle of it where it has some photos from the book. From his time at Asilomar. So, like I said, 1954, the talk was entitled Discovering God. This quote on the screen is one of the very first quotes early on in the talk. And it's one that I want to unpack for you because you're going to read that and many people read it and go, what? So, early on in this talk in 1954, and again, the whole message is about discovering God, whatever it is. And we're going to go through some quotes, and you're going to think, when are we going to talk about discovering God? Well, he is from the very beginning, but he's setting the stage in his early quotes. And in one of the first ones he says at the outset of this particular talk is that Plotinus said that nature is the great no thing, but it isn't exactly nothing because it has an office to perform, to receive the images of the contemplation of the spirit. Well, first off, who's Plotinus? Plotinus was a Greek Neo-Platonist philosopher, from 2,000 plus years ago, who basically took the works of Plato and took them to the next level. He was very much, his writings and talks are very much in alignment with science of mind. Ernest Holmes borrowed from Plotinus very much and the other Neo-Platonists. But this particular quote, he says that nature, what is nature? Nature's this world around us. It's the world of form. It's the stuff. It's your computer. It's your body. It's your room. It's the other people that you meet and bump into. So that's nature. Nature is this physical world. Plotinus said that nature is the great no thing. So we're saying this is not anything. It's a no thing. But he says it's not exactly nothing. So what does that mean to say it's no thing, but it's not nothing? Because it has an office to perform. What does that mean? It means he has a job to perform. It has a thing to perform. In other words, this material world of nature has something to do for God, with God. It's a part of God. It's an essence of God. And its role is to receive the images of the contemplation of the Spirit. Okay, so let's unpack this just a little bit more. And in doing this, I want to pull another quote. It's the only quote that I'm sharing with you today that's going to come from another source. And that particular source is Holmes' Dictionary of New Thought Terms. And when Holmes uses the phrase nature as the great no thing, he's talking specifically about a term, quote, used by Neoplatonists to express the idea that the visible universe is not a thing in itself. It means that nature is no thing in itself. What does that mean? It's an effect of that which projects it. So even though it's an effect of the mind being projected, it's not nothing. It's something as an effect, but ultimately at its deep source, what we see as the material world is not a thing. The true actual thing is God or spirit in the realm of spirit. But what this no thing is an effect that, or an experience that we are moving through. Holmes famously stated that when somebody asked him if the world of the material world was real, he says it's real as form. It's real as an effect. So it's real, and we're having a real experience. But ultimately, it's not the greatest reality. The greatest reality lies in spirit. And so that's what this first quote gets at. So he's conveying the deeper meaning that the real thing is God or spirit, and that it's expressing itself through physical forms, through you and I, and all the things that we see as physical objects in the world are all effects of the expression of God or spirit expressing itself, and that these physical forms are not nothing. They're no thing, but they're not nothing, which is kind of hard to wrap your mind around. But you really have to understand he's getting at the fact, the word, that this is an experience, an effect. It's something to us in our experience, as divine aspects of the one, but it's not a thing. Okay. Let's pause there for a minute. I want to see, we have some people listening today. I just want to acknowledge who all is here. Wayne, thank you, Wayne. We like you too. We're not going to get into governmental stuff, but I know what you're hinting at there. Linda, oh, you have that book. Good. Well, what I'm going to call to your attention is that and I'm going to come back and talk about this at the end, Linda, is that the quotes and things that I'm pulling in for this discussion this morning are from my website, Conscious Bridge. And at the very end, I'll give you the website and show you some screenshots. But back after the book was published, and I mentioned my friends who didn't understand the book. So I sat down and sort of went through the first chapter, this one we're going through this morning, and sort of analyzed it and tried to put it in more relatable terms, writing to my friends in a way, writing to those secular people who don't understand science of mind, and trying to explain what Holmes was getting at. And if you find this presentation this morning, this talk, beneficial, and you want to go deeper with the talk, I'm going to give you the links to the website so that you can go back and actually read the 2 blogs I wrote, which takes it actually deeper than what I'm doing today. I'm giving you the overview or the essence of it just in the matter of time. But there's 2 blogs on my website where I take this one talk of Holmes and break his quotes down and try to explain what he's talking about. And Roy from Fort Morgan, is this live? Yes. Since we brought you up, you're actually live. Are we live? What is live? There's a deeper question, right? And Shay from Colorado, good morning, Shay. Good to have you with us again. And let's see, Linda mentions she's in the mountains of Colorado. I believe I did that. And Wayne is telling me, crack on, Mystic. I'm with you. Not quite sure exactly where you're going with that comment, but I agree with you. You're fired up. Okay, we got it. We're all fired up, and we're trying to discover God this morning, really. And Shay says she wants to see that blog, and I'll show you some screenshots at the very end, Shay, and give you the reference. But if you want to multitask, you can go to consciousbridge.com and search on Discovering God, and you'll find the 2-part blog that I did on it. So thank you all for acknowledging that you're here and where you are. If anybody else is watching live, feel free to drop a comment and let me know where you are. And if you got a question about anything, be sure to question what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I want you to see that Holmes starts his talk in Discovering God and saying that the world that we experience it here, this material world, is an effect, and it's the real thing is something different, and that's what Holmes begins with. And we can look at this, and if you go to any of my classes, or you talk about a lot of the, I talk about a lot of this. Is sometimes it's helpful for us to remember that so much of our attention is focused on this material, physical realm because we're immersed in it every day. But Holmes is continuously talking about realms and dimensions that transcend where we are. And one way of looking at this is we're down here on this chart on the bottom in the material realm. Now we're seeing things and thinking about them in the mental realm. This thing we call consciousness that we locate generally in our heads, but just not really there. But we locate it. We tend to think of it as our heads. when we walk around with this consciousness, it's me, and I'm looking out at the world. So this consciousness, this actual nebulous thing called consciousness, is actually an experience in the mental plane, or the mental dimensions of life that transcend the physical realm. It's not just simply firings of the neurons of the brain, as materialist scientists like to say, but it's an aspect of something that's embedded in everything that is. Consciousness is embedded in all it is. But our use of consciousness, a sense of ourselves, we walk around and we look out at the external world, and we tend to think that our bodies and this internal mind, our mind body, is us, and we're interacting with all the rest of the world, and that's what's real. Well, what we're interacting with is the material universe, or the physical plane. But it's not real in what Ernest is saying. It's not nothing, though. It is something. It's an effect. It's an experience that we're moving through, and we're having that experience within our mental realm, within our thoughts and our experiences of the mental realm. But our really truth lies at a higher level, at a spiritual realm. And so, and you'll notice the evolution. I'm not going to delve too much into that, but involution is the process of creation where spirit embedded itself into its forms and allowed its form to forget its source. So we're all aspects of spirit, but we've forgotten that. And evolution is in our consciousness. We're returning back to remembering our truth, knowing that we came from God. So if you can sort of see those three levels there, then you get sort of a sense of what Holmes is talking about, getting us focused on. Now we're going to go back to the quote again. We're going to add a few more words to it. Okay, he says, Plotinus said that nature is the great no thing, but it isn't exactly nothing, because it has an office, a job to perform, to receive the images of the contemplation of the spirit. Okay, so this form is where we receive the effects of the contemplation of spirit. He says, there is no more doubt that there is such a neutral field of creative action in the universe, in the realm of mind. I like that, the realm of mind, because he's actually dropping a hint there for you that mind transcends, this physical world that we have this experience of. He says there's no more doubt that there is such a neutral field of creative action in the universe, in the realm of mind, than there are different kinds of trees growing out of the same soil. So, yes, that's a continuation of that same point, basically reminding us that there is a neutral field that acts upon thoughts, spirit's thoughts, which includes our thoughts, because we're part of spirit. In other words, what we experience is this manifest physical universe of diversity and multiplicity, or nature, as he terms it, is an effect created by thinking in the field of mind. Thoughts from the mental realm flow through a blind force that simply reacts to them to create the effects of the physical world. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Shea says, I think it's real. It's just not all there is. A minuscule little fraction of reality. Yeah, that's so true, Shea. Let's think about that. Somebody once told me that even though this material world isn't real, it sure is mesmerizing, is how they like to put it, which I like that term because we're hypnotized by it. We look at the physical world and it hypnotizes us into believing it's real. It's real for us as an experience. Obviously, if I hit my hand on the table here, I'm going to feel it. And, all of the things in the physical world lead to experiences that we have in the physical world. But what we're called to recognize is that it is an experience and we can't deny its reality. If you get too far afield here, there's the materialist versus the idealist. If you take to the strict thinking, materialists say there is nothing that's not physical matter. And the idealists say there's nothing that's not thoughts, and there is no real matter. So any matter is an illusion. In fact, that seems, unreal for us to think of that way, because obviously if we thought that this was an illusion, the very matter that I stumped my toe is going to hurt. And I'm going to say, well, that sure is an illusion. But what the idealist really, and Holmes gets at, is that the real reality is thoughts, but they create this experience. So the experience is real to us as an experience. My stubbing my toe is real to me as an experience, but it's just part of our total reality. Our total reality actually transcends the physical reality, just like you're talking about there, Shea. Okay. Moving on. Love this quote. So Holmes says we have what's called a spirit, soul, and body. But we're not thinking of them as a three-layer cake. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The Greeks, who he borrowed from, again, Plotinus was a Greek philosopher. The Greeks had an absolute, a spirit, a soul principle, then a mind principle, and a body. In other words, they had sort of like a five-layer cake. Part of our philosophy is taken from the intellectual concept of the Greeks, except that I put the absolute and the spirit together, called the body completely the effect, and the soul or the mind, I divided into its two aspects of action and reaction. So here Holmes in this lecture is telling us where he got his teaching symbol from, where he got his chart from, where he outlines, spirit, soul, effect, or body. He got it from the Greeks, but he took their concepts and modified them. So the teaching symbol, most of us, if we've studied Science of Mind, have seen this symbol before. You've seen it with different labels on it. The labels, essentially the circle in the center stands for everything that is. We put a circle around it, but it's the divine aspects of the universe and its material and non-material aspects. Okay. And that it's simply taking God or spirit or the all and divided it into three characteristics and ways in which it expresses. And the top part of the chart is it expresses is pure thinking, awareness, and thoughts. The center area is it's a subconscious thinking, but it's also the action of consciousness that acts upon the thoughts. And then the bottom aspect of his chart is this physical form or the effects that we see in this physical world. So Holmes' teaching symbol was to say that the three aspects of the total all of spirit is that thinking at the top flows through a force that acts upon it to create this manifest experience that we're going through at the bottom. And then it breaks down. You might think of it like consciousness or mind is in everything, like water or H2O is in everything, but H2O appears in different forms. And in the various top, it might be like in its vapor form as steam. In the center, it's like water in its liquid form. And then when it freezes into ice, that's what mind is in the bottom. So I'm using this as a metaphor, but it doesn't hold up totally. But you get the idea is that mind is this thing that can change its aspects and expression from steam to water to ice, from its most etheric, non-physical aspects to a more liquid state into a solid state temporarily, and then it dissolves back into its liquid and its vapor. And that's the same way that spirit acts in terms of thinking. The thoughts are very etheric or highly vibrational, and they become more firm or liquid or lower vibrations until they turn into the densest vibrations within the world of form. And that's what Holmes teaches. So, but Holmes said he got his concepts from the Greek. And what I've done on this particular chart is put the Greeks on one side and Holmes on the other. And that top part of Holmes' chart is where the Greeks talked about an absolute separate from spirit. And we're not going to get into their distinction today, but they put those separate. And then they put the soul principle and the mind principle separate, and then the body or the world of effects at the bottom. So Holmes studied those principles, and he said, here's how I would put it. He would put the spirit, or he also often refers to it as the absolute as well, at the top, that there is a soul mind that is acting upon. It's the action and reaction that acts upon our thinking that creates the body or effect. Okay. And so this is how Holmes took the Greek concepts and charted them himself. But again, he says we're not thinking of them like a three-layer cake. In other words, even though we're mapping them into levels, that's just to understand them. When we map their different ways in which they express into these charts, that's just a way for us in our humanness to sort of break it down and then go, aha, I get what he's talking about. But ultimately, everything on that chart, everything is everywhere or nowhere, just as we might envision a hologram. Every part of the hologram is everywhere at one time. So everything, all of the thought, the action that acts on the thoughts, and the world of effects are all contained in everything. And so the entire The modern terms of looking at the universe as a model like a hologram is actually very close to what Holmes was saying, that everything is contained in everything and that it's all one. It's not a 3-layer cake. We just break it down into these layers to help us and our humanness to understand it. So everything in that circle is all one. It just expresses in 3 different ways. Okay. So we really are talking about discovering God, even though it does seem like we're not. But discovering God means shifting your attention and awareness upward. Again, we're using these terms for us to understand it. There's a no up and down, but that's why we put it in quotes. We're shifting our attention upward from the world of effects, from the world of nature and no thing, to that higher state where you can first recognize your ability to make choices in the mental realm, and then ultimately to taste the sweetness and unity and oneness of God. So what's standing between us is a movement upward in our consciousness from focusing on the downward into the world of effects and shifting our attention upward to the world of spirit. Sometimes I look at it like, we're sitting in the middle in the mental realm in our thoughts, and we're looking down at the world of form and saying all of this is real, but it's calling us, and what Ernest is telling us to do is to shift our attention upward to spirit, to the real truth, to the source that embedded itself into everything and gave us this world of effects. And the more that we can focus on that, the more we can discover God. And so ultimately our desire is to shift our attention and focus out of the world of form. Yes, live in it, enjoy its blessings, etc. Shift our awareness up into the divine, and then come back with that awareness and live in the world of form with a total sense of understanding and sense of experience of the oneness of the universe. So that's what ultimately where we're going here. Some more quotes from Holmes from his talk at Asilomar in 1954. He says, "This is our whole business, is to discover God, but something's in the way. Whether we call it the mortal, the human, the carnal, the race thought, the race suggestion, the race hypnotism." By the way, race, when you hear Holmes talk about the word race, it's not white, black, Asian. It's not the human races that we divide humans into. When he says the word race, he means the human race in totality. So although we call what's in the way of us discovering God, it's our mortal self, our physical effects, the human side. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Our human experience gets in the way. The carnal, that's our animalistic nature. The thoughts of all humans, the suggestion of consciousness of all humans, the hypnotism of this effect that we're going through. He quotes, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear that what we shall be. We don't see what we are going to be, i.e. God, because we see as though through a glass darkly." In other words, we've got like blinders on that keep us look away from seeing the true light of God. So we see as through a glass darkly, but we know that when he doth appear, we shall be like him. That is, when we take the blinders off, when we take our dark glasses off, when we look clearly, purely at spirit in the one, and we look upward to spirit, when we see the truth and feel and know the truth, then we shall be like him. We shall recognize the oneness and live from a state of oneness. Yes. Yes, no, we're not of this world. Yes, we're in this world, but not of the world. And rest in God and say amen. Absolutely, Wayne. Yes. And so hopefully you see where we're going with this. Let's continue with another quote from Holmes from this talk. He says, "At the center of the human mistake, the human isolation, the thing that thinks it's separate, there's always a sense of guilt, of insecurity, of anxiety, of not being wanted, needed, and loved. This is why Jesus forgave people." So at the center of our mistake is this thing, the sense of isolation and thinking that we're separate. And it's real natural. We're mesmerized by the world of effects. We think that we're separate and apart and that we're interacting. That's part of our experience. Spiritual beings embedded into a human experience is to have the relationships with everything. But it's not to be stuck in the sense of separation. It's to through meditation, affirmations, through reading, through contemplation, is to lift our spirit and our vision upwards to the divine and taste and realize the unity of all that is and live in that happiness, and then come back into this world and see it differently. So he's calling us to do this. And that's why he said Jesus forgave people, because he forgave our wrong thinking. We can forgive ourselves. We have been dropped into a world where we're taught to think we're separate and apart. And now that we're learning and opening our eyes, we are growing, we're awakening to the Spirit, to the divine, to the unity of all that is. We shouldn't dwell on the fact that for so many years we have and continuously drop into a sense of separation and beat ourselves up to it. Forgive yourself, just as Jesus forgave us, he says. Forgive yourself for thinking that way, but it's time for us to let it go and to discover God, to discover the unity. Here's another Holmes quote. After all that stands between heaven and earth. In other words, what is heaven? Heaven is that divine essence at the top of the chart, and earth is the human realm at the bottom of the chart. After all that stands between heaven and earth is an idea. And I'm a great believer in this, that we must treat every man's problem, poverty, sickness, unhappiness, no matter what it is something that is operating through him because it's identified with him. So it's operating through us because we identify with this stuff. We identify with this separation. We identify with our problems, our sicknesses, our unhappiness, and all the things of life, this physical life. They're operating through us because we identify with it. But, he says, it does not belong to him or to anyone else. And I would add one other thing. Since we are individualized centers of the consciousness of God, we have the privilege to initiate a new pattern. Because we can think just as God thinks, we have the ability of free will choice to change our thinking. We can change our thinking, see the unity, see what our old thoughts and patterns have been, and to release them if they no longer serve us, and to start thinking new thoughts and see our life anew. We can create a new pattern. We can create a new pattern. So, ultimately, what does it mean to discover God? What is Holmes getting at in this entire lecture? Now, I've left out a lot of quotes, and I invite you to go read the lecture from the book. Again, the book is available on Amazon. It's available from many booksellers. I would invite you to get a copy of it. It's a great, deep book. It does take reading and contemplation on it. But Holmes is saying, what does it mean to discover God? Here's some key concepts that I pulled from this particular lecture. One, he's telling us to release the idea that we're individuals who are separate at our heart from everyone else in the universe. Let go of that thought. Yes, we're mesmerized by the world of effects, but let go of that idea. We need to release our old stories that have limited our experience here in the material world. Yes, we've been taught things by our parents, our experiences, our life, and we've taught and placed limitations on ourselves. We need to let go of the old stories that have limited our experience here. What's limiting you? What is limiting you? Find out what is limiting you and release it. We also need to release and forgive our hurts of the past. If anybody in the past has ever harmed you and you're hanging on to that, let go of it. Everybody is doing the best they can from where they are. And that's not to say you shouldn't have healthy boundaries with other aspects of the one, other people, are causing harm. Yes, have healthy boundaries, but also to look through and see that they're where they are because of their thoughts and their beliefs and the stories they're telling themselves. And Holmes is telling us to release and forgive our hurts of the past here, to forgive. Now, we're letting go and we're forgiving, but what are we claiming? We're claiming a new idea that we are individualized expressions of the one life, interlinked everything everywhere. We are the divine, expressing as ourselves. Again, this is a new idea. We're all trying to work and grow in our awareness that we're individualized. We're not individuals. It's a distinction there. An individual implies we're separate, but we're individualized expressions of the one life. Individualized expressions of the one life. We're all one. We're interlinked to everything everywhere, like a hologram. We're the divine, expressing as ourselves. Claim that, know it. We are also here to claim a greater story, that we are these spiritual beings who are experiencing the vast gifts of this human life. What are your gifts? What are your gifts? It's time for you to look around and see the gifts of this experience and to claim them. And the more you see of them, the more you're going to see more of them. It's real easy in this world to focus on the negativity and see the things that are less than what we want. And when we do that, we feed those thoughts. But Holmes is telling us to recognize our gifts. And by the very nature that we turn our attention to those gifts and give them energy and focus and attention, we grow more of them in our lives. Okay. Ultimately, discovering God is discovering our divine birthright and returning home in our consciousness to the source oneness from which we sprang. Keep in mind that it's not a 3-layer cake model that I showed you a moment ago. When we are in this physical world, that's one aspect of expression. It's simply an effect. It's the great no thing. But above that is the mental realm and the spiritual realm. And we, in our consciousness, have often forgotten where we came from, that we came from the spiritual realm in a place of unity and bliss and oneness. We're having an effect of this world that we're moving through. And the more we can turn our attention and focus upward to the divine, anchor our awareness into the spirit of the oneness and spirit, the more that we can discover God, the more that we can return home to our source, which is God, the more that we will discover God. And that's ultimately what Holmes is telling us in this talk from 1954. So, like I said, a lot of the content and a lot of the quotes that I pulled this morning came from 2 blogs I wrote back about 3 years ago. Here's pictures of them. Holmes at Asilomar, Discovering God, Part 1 and Part 2. They're from my website, Conscious Bridge. If you're interested in reading the quotes or going deeper or saying, what the heck was Mark talking about this morning? Obviously, you can replay the video of this and listen to it again. But if you want to read the content, I would invite you to go to my website. The website is consciousbridge.com, consciousbridge.com. And then when you get there, you can search in the search button for Discovering God, and it will take you to a page where these 2 blogs will appear for you. I invite you to also check out all of the resources on my website. There's a lot of stuff there that I think that you'll find is useful. I've posted a lot of stuff that is interesting information about New Thought that I've gathered through the years. So there's a lot of access to free books by various older New Thought teachers and things of that nature. So it's an interesting thing, but highly, highly, highly encourage you, if you don't have the book, Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, it is a really, and I'm not saying it simply because of my involvement with the book, but I've had so many people tell me how much value they've gotten from this, of appreciating reading the words of Holmes, where his very humanness in his talks to these people at these summer conferences, and then going much, much deeper in terms of the mystical aspects of science of mind. So, again, we hope you've enjoyed this. We hope that you support the New Thought Media Network. Across the bottom of the screen is their website. And if you go there and click on the donate button, you'll have an opportunity to support all of the programming that is occurring here on the New Thought Media Network. So as we conclude our time together this morning, I just want to say thank you for being with me. And I hope that this was beneficial. Yes. Thank you very much, Shay. And thanks to everybody who was attending and watching this morning, and blessings to you all.